Welcome back to the Life Coach Lounge. Uh, Brings me great joy to have another new guest on the podcast today, James Tates. We kind of connected recently and we've been coaching together, just been learning more and more about you. You have a very, very fascinating story. I hope that we can talk about some of that today, as well as a bunch of other topics. So before we get into all of that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
What's going on, world? This is James Tates. I am a burnout and purpose coach. Yes, to what Leroy was just saying, we've been spending some time getting to know each other, and everything that we wanted to do within the coaching world and putting ourselves out there. A little bit about me, just for short. Prior Marine, prior Army soldier. Um, Suffered through PTSD, suicide survivor. I'm a dad of two amazing boys. They get on my nerves, but they're amazing. um, and I'm married to my amazing wife, Kayvon. So yeah, it's a very eccentric bunch in Tate's household. But aside from that, in terms of how I support others, is helping people through their place of, just feeling stuck and just have this inner know to where it's like there's more out there for their lives and they want to get out the grips of the 9 to 5 grind and to rebel against that, to create their own lives. So there's ways to reach me. If you need me, I'm here. Aside from that, yeah, this is an honor to be here. So thanks again, Leroy, for having me on here.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And every time I hear parts of your story, there's a lot there to explore. The first question that comes to mind is when you talk about PTSD and being a suicide survivor, and then turned coach and trying to help other people. Can you just help us understand how that's all connected for you and how that's inspired you to be the coach that you are?
It's a great question. There's times where I still try to piece together the details in a sense. Um, but to your question, a little bit about it. I served in the Marine Corps starting in 2006, got out around 2011, and at that time, you know, I went through a place in my particular Marine job to where I was dealing with mortuary affairs. So I was the for those that understand in the military world, I was doing casualty escort. So I was the person that was going to other people's houses, letting them know that, hey, they have a loss. Um, and that was a lot that I had to deal with as a 20-year-old, right? Graduated high school early and that whole nine. So I never really had time to let life mature me in a sense. And that's not at the fault, right? I think that was one of those things that prepped me. Had a kid, my oldest son, who's been a blessing, a joy, and got married as soon as I got out. So I never really had the time to really process, to really get back to myself. And after that, I went into the army because I felt like there was a void that wasn't filled. Had my second son, Justin, uh, an amazing kid, lots of energy. But after that, throughout that time, these pockets of time, I really never had a chance to really process what I went through just to throw myself into marriage, throw myself into being a dad, and really never had time to process. And when it came down to the PTSD, I did lose a close friend to alcoholism, and that really struck a nerve for me, right? Um, Going into school, getting a college degree, and just trying to force myself into this grind. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I gotta make it. I gotta make it. I gotta make it. What more do I need to do? What's the fastest way I could catch the bag in a sense, right? For my family. Coming out, I didn't have a plan, right? At that time, they were downsizing in numbers because of 9/11. Um, and at that time, I was dealing with a lot in terms of my own stress, the fight or flight syndrome, and essentially fast forward up until this present moment for just, for that time, it was around like 3 or 4 years ago where I almost let myself go. And I got to a place to where I was at my low, you know, financially things weren't there. And that created a ripple effect in terms of home, how I was dealing with myself. And it just got to that place to where I almost took myself out, and I went to get appropriate help. Um, Went to the hospital for about 2 weeks, and essentially it was a psych ward, right? Within that second week of my time there, I remember at that time I was at my lowest of low. I was at rock bottom, prayed, like, God, I don't know where you're taking me, but I trust you. And I remember vividly, I still tell people to this day, it was like a cool wind on that hot day that wrapped around me. And it was just like that reassurance. It was reassurance that life was going to get better, but it was also reassurance that I had a little bit of AC because it was hot. It was hot as day outside. So that cool wind did help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but on a serious note, that's where everything changed. And to the last part where coaching found me after COVID, we went back into work, and I was at the place to where I felt like I could take over my life all over again. And mind you, that's what coaching is about, right? Helping people that's ready to take over their lives. And after that, I remember I tried to apply for a leadership position, and it turned out being the best no in the world.
Mm.
I was irritated, not getting it. The politics of it, I wasn't happy about, but it was like it turned out being the best no. I remember I sat in the back the process, and essentially I went on Facebook and Instagram to find memes to laugh at, just to
Mm-hmm.
cheer myself up and just let go. And after that, it said, "Do you want to be a life coach?" I remember literally that same night around 3 or 4 in the morning, I sat there and I sat there to process, and I did the survey from Lumia, and the rest was history. That was the first time in my life that I not only I immersed myself, but I authentically bet on myself and went on that journey just to learn about that. And 6 months later, I ended up being a certified life coach, and I'm in that journey, part of my journey now, to where I'm trying to get that ACC accreditation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that, you've been through a lot. And I think it takes tremendous courage to come on here and share parts of your story. Um, and I'm sure there's people out there that, just feel really comforted by the fact that you can share those details of your story and talk about the lows. You said you hit rock bottom. That's as low as it gets. And then you can also talk about how things turn around and just where your life is taking you, and just that it's a wild ride. It's doing ups and downs the whole time. And yeah, so I appreciate that. I think what I'm really curious about is that processing part. What was it like now that you have the opportunity to look back on those experiences and say to yourself, there were years where I just wasn't allowing myself to process. And then when you hit rock bottom and you seek out the type of support that you feel like you needed, and I'm assuming that you had the opportunity to then process some of these things, and now you talk about processing stuff as if you understand that you weren't. So what is it like to look back now and like to know that you weren't processing? Like, what does that really mean, that you weren't allowing yourself to process things and that you feel like you just kept going and going and going?
Yeah, that's a great question. From what I've learned, and within life, is that people process in different ways. And for me, Leroy, it was more so of going through constant burnout,
Mm-hmm.
going through phases to where essentially there's a word that I use called steamrolling.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is essentially that you're just waking up, going through, the mundane pieces of life. You wake up, wash your face, brush your teeth, shower, whatever, and then you just go about life. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't take time to like really, hey, this is what happened. What emotions did I come across?
Mm,
and essentially learning how to sit with it, right? And for me, within that part of this, like the story that I've shared, it was a lot of steamrolling.
mm-hmm,
It was a lot of steamrolling from the aspect of waking up. How am I going to do this for? How am I going to get through my day for my family today? Um, I got to go to work. I got to come back and do a 15-page paper. Um, and at that time, within that time frame, I was dealing with my own alcoholism, escaping.
mm,
And when you talk about steamrolling, a part of that layer is understanding your escape methods,
mm-hmm,
and knowing if it's healthy or not. So in that detail, it went from that, and I think that within all of the steamrolling places that I was going through, just trying to get through the day, the next hour, the next moment, it then transformed and transmuted to where fast forward up until this present moment, to where it was more so of like learning my emotions, learning how to sit with them,
mm-hmm,
knowing my moments of solitude, and really not just knowing my moments of solitude, but having a relationship with solitude.
mm-hmm,
And the beauty of solitude is that it allows me to take in those emotions, feel what it is that I need to feel, know my support routes in terms of my friends. Um, and it led to this beautiful purpose to where I was to meet amazing people such as yourself and amongst other friends, and really just be in tune with that.
mm-hmm,
Your support routes. It goes a long way. And then on top of that, the last part and in closing is really that transmutation of, my personal story of alcoholism, and then transmuting that into meditation, transmuting that to like finding different ways to ground myself,
mm.
and really understanding to what I consider my peace bubble. Everybody has a peace bubble. It's just more so of that relationship of it, right? And understanding that. So
Yeah.
it was a lot that I had to go through. It went from steamrolling to then understanding what it is like to process and just
Mm-hmm.
sit with it. And the last part is giving yourself a choice as to how you want to feel. It was a game changer for me.
Yeah. Mm. Create your peace bubble. That is, I feel like if you had a workshop or a workbook as a coach, there would be that just portion or segment where you're just teaching people how to create a peace bubble. I love it. I love it. It just really stood out to me. And yeah. I mean, I have my peace bubbles, right? Like there are things that I do for myself. And I just want to highlight some more parts of what you said you were doing. And then I have something that actually relates to coaching as well, like a coaching skill that just popped up for me. But I was initially going to ask you, how did you make space for those emotions? And you kind of covered that. And you said, you know, I had to practice or set the intention around giving myself time by myself, that solitude you were talking about. And within that solitude, making creating time and space for these emotions to come up and to then process them. And as far as I know, in my own experience and all the education that I have around alcohol, in the short term, the alcohol seems like the best thing. Oh man, I feel relaxed in this moment. Um, I can let my shoulders down and I can just not think about all the stuff that stresses me out. But in the long term, doesn't really have the effects that you're talking about when you talk about creating a space bubble, creating solitude without the effects of alcohol. And so I'm wondering, like, were you noticing that, like, the more solitude you created for yourself, there was just different results as opposed to going to the bar or coming home and pouring yourself a drink? What was the difference?
It's funny how you asked that. I was actually talking to my wife about it a few weeks ago, and she said the one thing she said, James, you covered up your alcoholism very well.
Hmm.
And I sat with that. Never thought about that, right? And essentially, by me learning how to sit with that and really think about that journey of escapism as a whole, right? It was a lot. because it really got me to a place where I thought about the impact that I had as a husband, the impact that I had as a dad, the impact that I had as James Tates, the man
Mm-hmm.
himself, right? And I asked her, I was like, well, what led to that? She was like, you were very high functioning as a drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, never thought of it in that manner. And sitting with that, it caused me to really take time to understand the impact that I had on my family, take time to have the impact, understand and have that impact that I had on myself. And it just, behind the breakthrough is a breakdown. And that breakdown, it caused me to really sit with that and really just let those emotions out on my own, when reflecting. I think my wife left out to the store and I just sat with it for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
just to process it. And one thing about alcoholism is that it's like it takes you out of your reality. You
Mm-hmm.
no longer be in the present moment, right? And you're into this fantasy world, a world that doesn't exist. Well, I mean, it does, but then again, it doesn't to a degree, versus being in a moment to process, and you're in that present moment and giving yourself a chance to allow those feelings to feel, take a look at the entire conversation, dissect it, break it down. It's like a ball of clay, right? You're able to
Mm-hmm.
take this ball of clay and then do whatever as you may with it.
Mm-hmm.
And really fast forward up into this present moment, learning that solitude piece. I think the biggest difference between the two is understanding that present moment,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that present moment. And if sometimes you have to have a good cry,
Mm-hmm.
there's moments where I had to let some of those emotions out and understand that I have an opportunity to forgive myself for what I did. I have an opportunity to forgive myself in those moments, and the biggest part it led for me to understand was that I'm not perfect, and I think that was the issue that that I've had from this place of like dealing with my personal stuff and that burnout. And the one thing I've recognized is that once you work on your inner self, your outer world starts to change. Your outer world
Mm.
starts to morph.
Yes.
And that's where it came into play. I gave myself a chance to feel what I wanted to feel. And like, hey, this cry is done. The past is the past. How do I want to feel? What do I want to change about this? How will I use my story to transmute, compassion into others? Right?
Yeah.
That escapism world. The minute that you get back home from that plane trip to Miami, you're back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has changed. So yeah, sometimes you got to put it like that in that place of travel. But yeah, it was a journey of its own, learning how to transmute that escapism into you know solitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds like that solitude is really just what was the catalyst for you to be able to process. And I think when we think about, we're talking about steamrolling, we're talking about a way of going about your day, which is go, go, go. I should be doing all these things. And, because I have so many things to do, I can't even imagine giving myself a couple minutes by myself and seeing what transpires. Instead, I'm going to keep my eye on these are the things that you should do. I'm a father, I'm a family man. I need to make money, all these things that you listed, and just go, go, go. And outside of your story, just in general, I think we're all accustomed to how distracting technology is. You have the phone, you have the computers, you have the video games, you have the Netflix. Everything's trying to grab your attention. And it's when you think about all those things combined and what our society and our reality is really like these days, it makes it very difficult, very challenging to create that time and space. And I think that's part of the reason why something like coaching is really helpful. Something like someone just taking a retreat somewhere, like getting away from it all, right? Create another way to create that solitude, or to go to a place where even if you're not by yourself, you're with a whole bunch of other people that are also trying to get away from the distractions, And so you may have some time to yourself, but you may also have some time to process with other people. So there are various ways to do this type of processing that you're talking about, and giving ourselves time to let these emotions surface. And it was really that forgiveness piece that you said that I've experienced that in my own life too, through meditation practice. And I literally one morning just just broke down. Like you said, to have a breakthrough, you got to have a breakdown. And the things that I feel like I was allowing myself to forgive myself for felt like years of weight that I had been carrying. Granted, you can't see this weight, but you can't see it, but it affects who I am. I don't
Mhm.
feel like I was waking up every day like there was something that you couldn't see that I feel like was just weighing me down. And it's almost like it's so hard to like express that to other people sometimes. You feel really alone in your own world carrying this weight around. But it was that forgiveness part. That was probably one of the most profound experiences that I had, is when I allowed myself to forgive myself for various things, and I just broke down crying. And it was one of those like just sobbing where like my body's shaking. And then, 10, 15 minutes later, that weight was gone, and it's not like it's gone forever. It's like I had experienced so much in the world. I had accumulated all this metaphysical weight that I was carrying around, and I found a way. I found a way to let that kind of like process and let that go. And what's funny is since then, that was a few years ago, I feel like there have been moments now where I can kind of like feel this sense of more weight starting to pile up. But there are now like these practices that I have, this type of inner work that you're talking about, like sitting down to meditate and allowing yourself, like thinking about, is this another time in my life where I need to forgive myself for something? Like, am I carrying around like some sort of shame or guilt for something? And I think that's just life itself, is like that it's a never ending process of just that. Like the weight is going to pile up again. And the whole point of, you know, learning these tools and practicing whatever it is that we practice that helps us achieve this inner work, so to speak. Like the importance of practicing it is so that you don't have to carry around as much weight as you did in the past. So that you don't have to let it keep piling and piling up. It's like that you're going to get a little bit of weight, but you also have practices that help you put that down from time to time.
Exactly. And just to what you said, that inner work does a lot. And I think when we become aware of that inner work that we have to do, that's when the change starts happening. That's
Mm-hmm.
when the magic starts happening. And it's one of those things to where it's like you're putting one foot after the other,
Mm-hmm.
and the clouds just open up. And once you start getting in the habit of that, and a positive practice of it, everything just changes. The environment changes. And to what you were saying, in terms of like feeling that weight come off of you, that that alone says a lot, to where it's like it's one thing to have that weight off you. It's another thing that's like, I fully forgave myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have to move on,
Yeah.
right? This is my past, but this doesn't make me into who I am now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's it's powerful. Like solitude is powerful. Solitude is magical if you
Yeah.
allow it to be, right? It says a lot. Like sitting in meditation, or your own spiritual routine,
Mm-hmm.
it goes a long way. For me, what I've discovered is that it kept me grounded.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps me cool and calm. It keeps me at a place to where I'm not too high, but I'm not too low. It's like I'm very even keeled, and it allows me to have this feeling like I could take on the world in such a cool and calm manner. It's like I tap into my own Superman in
Yeah.
a sense. So
Yeah.
it says a lot.
Very cool. Yeah, I love what we covered so far, and I just want to throw this out there. This podcast talks about coaching, and coaching is very different than therapy in many ways. And I think
Yes.
what we're talking about today, I believe there are things like when you talk about when you were at rock bottom and where you had to go and the type of support that you had to seek out at that time, that would fall more into that space of like people within the realm of therapy, psychologist. You said I was at a psych ward. And so I think, anyone listening to this podcast specifically, um, I just want them to try and recognize like there are various types of support, and depending on what it is that you're going through, um, the degree to which it's affecting you, um, you're gonna have to figure out what's right for you. And that said, I think some of the stuff we're talking about, it's almost like when we feel like things are weighing on us so heavily and we're in a place where it's almost difficult to look forward. It's almost like you want to wake up and you want to believe that this is the day where like my sights are on the future, I'm excited about the
Mhm.
now, and I'm ready to just get it. But you can't because you have all this stuff that's pulling you back, right? All that weight we were talking about. It's weighing you down, it's pulling you back. So as much as you want to look forward and you want to like focus on what can I do next? What am I excited about? What's going to help me get to this place of thriving? You just can't because you have all these things that you still need to work through. And it's like maybe you need to seek different support at that moment. But there's also this space where maybe you have a little bit of that, maybe you have none at all. And maybe you're at this place where you're waking up and you're thinking to yourself, what can I do? What is next? But you're also still feeling kind of stuck, but it's not the same. It's kind of like, what is it going to take for me to figure out how to be my best self, for me to chase that thing that makes me feel not just alive, but the most alive I've ever felt. And I feel like that's where the coaching comes in. Is like, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's discover that because maybe you've never discovered in the same way like if you've learned how to process and deal with stuff from the past, have you ever learned how to create a reality where you're really thriving, where you're really doing all the things that you want to be doing, and every day you're going to sleep almost just with a big smile on your face because you know that you're just putting in work and you're accomplishing things, and life just feels so rewarding. It feels so fulfilling that you're ready to go to bed because you can't wait to get up the next day, right? And it's a totally different place to be in. And so now that we're moving into this coaching space, it's so cool because you've had these experiences, and you have experience with both, being in this realm of um, having professional help on the therapy side of things, and then now being in this coaching space and being a burnout coach. So tell us, what is a burnout coach? What does that mean?
Man, burnout coach, my definition of it. That's a great question. I never had nobody ask me my personal definition of it. A burnout coach is somebody that helps people to where they recognize those patterns. It helps. I'm essentially turning the mirror for other clients to where they can recognize those patterns in terms of how is this affecting me at my job? How is this affecting me to where I take, my shift to home, um, and help people to find more practical ways to where they could ground themselves
Mm-hmm.
to where they can then take that next step in terms of finding what it is that their purpose is. Like, let's put it in this, right? We had COVID that just happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with that event happening over the past few years, it took away social interaction. So like high fives, daps, handshakes, right? It caused people to lose jobs. People was like in a position of like we was in this position where the 9 to 5 was our norm and we allowed it to be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
To people losing their jobs or those being bold enough to step into their own.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that reason is because of that piece of burnout. All right, cool. I mentioned burnout. What is that? That burnout is like, think about it, right? And speaking from my experience, coming home, looking at the wall, and knowing that in 12 hours after I eat, I wash up, I got to get back and do this again.
You're
I
you're
don't want to do this.
you're already dreading it.
Exactly, right? And you think about it, it's like, what are some other ways to where we could find ways to where you could practice those techniques to where one or two things. It can either help you get through your day to day, or it's like, hey, this isn't it. This
Hmm.
is taking a total effect on me. I want to take that next step in my life to see what else is out there. I want more.
Hmm.
I want more for my life. And I think those people that are currently thriving after this mass event that happened a few years ago, those people realize that, and now they went from a place of surviving to now thriving.
Hmm.
And that's where I want to help people from the burnout side of the house. How it ties into the purpose piece is more so of those that recognize that, and again, they want to tap in to what else is out there. They're, when you think about that burnout piece, it can do one or two things. You could either, you know, run away from it, or you could face it head on and see what else is out there for you.
Hmm.
Um, that purpose piece for me, that's where it hit heavy.
Hmm.
To where I want to know what else is out there in my life. What is my purpose? What gifts do I have? And I think burnout, bringing us back full circle, the burnout piece, it kind of hinders the person from having to recognize their own gifts to what
Hmm.
it is that they can offer the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. And I just keep thinking as you're talking about burnout in my mind, I'm like, there's so many stressors in the world, and there's so many reasons why someone, and I think all of us may have a slightly different experience, why we experience burnout and how we got there and what it is that we're perceiving in the world that is stressing us out. Whether it's the amount of things that we're doing, or it's the people in our lives, it's the environment that we're in. And so my question to you is to really help us like even dig a little deeper into like how a burnout coach, right? Like this is a specific niche that you're taking on. You know, the part of coaching is that we're not necessarily telling people what to do. Like if they have the wisdom in themselves and burnout is the thing that they're trying to figure out about themselves, but you're the burnout coach, you don't have the answers for their burnout, right? So what is it that by creating this niche, what is it that you offer to your clients as a burnout coach?
Phenomenal question. What is it that I offer to potential clients that's dealing with burnout is overall awareness. It's like I try to keep everything simple. I think simple is best. Um, but it's that overall awareness of one's patterns. And I will say from my personal story, just for the sake of the answer, it's like I had zero awareness of what I was going through. And a lot of people that I've talked to in my previous jobs, we mention that. And the one commonality that stands out is that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we get so caught our own routines micromanage us as opposed to us micromanaging the routine,
Mm.
right? And one of the
Can you wait?
things
Can you
that,
can you say that one more time?
yeah, you know, one our routines micromanage us
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to us micromanaging our routines.
Okay.
We don't take the time to really take power of our day. Instead, when we do the normal everyday routine, so for example, I wake up, I take my vitamins, I take my medicine, brush my teeth, go right to work, go into work with the mindset like this is about to be terrible for 8 hours. Therefore, once we say that, we put it out there, that manifests itself to where the
Mm-hmm.
day has gone bad.
Yep.
Okay, I got to come home. I got to have enough energy for the kids, for my wife, squeezing some sleep. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
When you already put all these things out there, or you already going in there mentally prepared, the day kind of manifests itself.
Yeah.
However, on the flip side, to where it's like, you know what? I have the opportunity to go to work. I have the opportunity to to make to make myself healthy by taking my meds and my vitamins. I want to do something different. Let me squeeze in a meditation,
Mm-hmm.
or let me squeeze in some journaling. When we become aware of our burnout, Leroy, and we it gets us to a place to where curiosity, kind of seeks in.
Mm-hmm.
So previously, I mentioned that when we put our stuff out there in the world to where the day goes bad, our words and thoughts have so much power to where it comes, we become our own David Blaine. It
Mm-hmm.
gets magical, right?
Yep.
Just as much as we have enough magic to manifest a day where it doesn't go so good, we have enough power to recognize that our day can be good.
Mm-hmm.
Our day is our ball of play,
Yeah.
to where I can add something to my routine. I could take out something out of my routine, take out a negative mindset. I have the opportunity to work versus
Mm-hmm.
I have to go here. Or it can manifest into a deeper path to where, hey, my inner wisdom is telling me that I need to step into this.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I said before the breakthrough, you have to have a breakdown. Burnout is its own breakdown, if you allow it to be, mind you, to where it can open up a path for you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we're not aware of that. And again, that gets back to what we were mentioning, right? To where our routines micromanage us as opposed to us micromanaging our routines.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really empowering people to take in that inner wisdom through, past practices. Hey, I used to just, I might get on my game for about an hour, and I would just go into work feeling good. And that's just something that I did as a kid to where I'm at now. And I'm like, all right, cool. And it's recognizing that past. Sometimes that burnout, it forces us to have us recognize our path.
Mm-hmm.
So to your question, bringing it back full circle, what I offer as a burnout coach is that overall awareness and the creative power for one to create their own routine. And who knows, it may manifest itself to where they identify their purpose,
Mm-hmm.
or make their inner world a better place.
Yeah. I love hearing how you bring that purpose piece back in there, because I know that's something else that's really important to you. And as I hear you talk about that, it makes me think about what success would look like, and the value that you provide to your clients, which is, if we can get you to a place where you don't feel burnt out anymore, you learn techniques to manage your burnout and manage stressors in your life, then you can actually find this place where you can connect with your sense of purpose, and you can go from that place of baseline to that place of thriving. So it all feeds into itself. And another thing, I love where you took that, because again, we're hearing it from you, the person themselves, talking about their niche, what it means to them. We've kind of heard your backstory, so we know that, you know, there's just so much experience, or so many experiences that you've had, that have gotten you to this place in your life where, what I think, like, the icing on the cake for someone to work with you in this way is just the patience that you have, almost like the understanding. Um, I know too, like, we've coached together, we're constantly working together. And when you coached me, one of the first things I noticed was how relaxed you were. And to me, that made me feel relaxed, because I have a tendency to go, go, go. And sometimes it's all good. Like, I can manage that, but sometimes I get caught up, and then you have to be careful about that. Could lead to burnout. And I just remember the first session with you where you were just so relaxed, and it just made me feel so relaxed. And I feel like that's even something like that, like the unspoken thing, is something that I feel like you offer as a burnout coach, like understanding that, like, this state of relaxation is good for us, especially if you're a person that's feeling burnt out. Like, if they got on the call and you're just like, all right, we need to get all these things done, it's like you're just feeding into the thing that brought them there in the first place. So just wanted to share a little bit about my experiences working with you and just how I see that like sometimes just because you've experienced burnout doesn't mean that you have the answer for everyone else. And if we're not giving clients our answers, it's almost like, well, how do you have a niche in the first place? It's because of those things too. It's because of the person that you are. And sometimes you don't even need to have the answer for someone. You don't even need to say anything. It's just like your aura, your energy. And I think when people work with you, just that they know that you're a burnout coach, whether you say anything or not about it, it's almost like they can feel it and sense it, you know?
I never thought of it in that way to that effect. That's the first I'm hearing about that. Well, that part, that aura.
Yeah.
It's funny how I have the little glow black background in here too, right?
Yeah.
No,
That's perfect.
that was the irony. That was so ironic. No, to the relaxing part, I've heard that from quite a few people, but in the way that you articulated to tie into the burnout, yeah, I never thought about it. And even as you said that, it's like what came to my mind is more so of like this tree. I'm not too big on trees, mind you, my days in the military, but that tree it just sits still, and then as the seasons change a leaf may fall off here and there, but the one thing that sticks is that tree is like immovable, right? And behind that I guess this aura of grounding, it allows other people to actually reflect on a deeper perspective. I actually did a session last Sunday, and the person told me, it's like, you have like this aura. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to put my finger on it, but you have like this aura, and it causes me to like really sit there
Mm-hmm.
and just think. And it's like, and as she said that, I thought to myself, like, maybe grounding causes us to like think. And I say all this because the beauty behind coaching, and going back to what you said previously about how like that roadmap between therapy and coaching, that coaching piece, what I love about it is just as much as a client is learning from me through my personal experiences or the story that they tell, I'm learning about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I take away something from them to where I can add that. It's like the Lion King, right? It's like this whole circle of life. Um, it's crazy how all of this works itself out in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, to where you know, it causes us to really reflect. And that's the one thing I love about coaching. I always sit back and I reflect.
Mm-hmm.
I reflect, not just within this aura that I have, but the session itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's the one biggest thing about, being a burnout and purpose coach is really taking the time and understanding people's story, understanding the trend of the community, understanding, you know, the commonalities of the burnout and
Mm-hmm.
purpose piece. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in my previous job, I had one person tell me this is the most amount of creators I've came across in my life. Now, mind you, he was younger than me, right? But when you think about it in perspective, there's a lot of people creating. The way we communicate is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty behind all of this, we're all figuring this out as a collective.
Mm-hmm.
Kids going to school through virtual learning, us right here doing a podcast,
Yeah.
in years before we would have to go meet up or whatever they may have you. So if you think about it, everybody is tapping into their own inner creator. And I think by us going through this source of burnout, it's forcing us to like turn the mirror on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
even having enough muscle to like turn the mirror and face ourselves and say like, hey, where is this taking me?
Yeah.
I don't know where you're taking me, but I trust it.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever it is that you pray, universe, whatever. I just trust in myself, or I trust in my higher power to take me where I need to go. And I feel like this, by me being a burnout and purpose coach, I feel like this is what I guess I'm destined to do.
Mm-hmm.
Going through all these no's, going through the trials and tribulations, going through my personal experiences to say, hey, I'm not going to say I fully understand it, but I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just where you meet people, and I think it's because of your experiences that play a big role. I think it's why that particular niche spoke to you and is very sounds very personal to you. But it's also, I think, one of the beautiful parts as you talk about learning about other people's experiences is when someone shows up as your client and you're helping them with their burnout, you're just able to like understand all the nuance to what that really means. And so as a burnout coach, you become a master of understanding burnout because you hear so many different ways that it shows up in people's lives. And that's why they're showing up to work with you, because you understand that. I have a feeling that you're going to be a lot more patient. What we were talking about earlier is you embody the antithesis of burnout, which is grounding yourself and appearing, just so calm and collected in a way that I feel like is soothing for other people, especially when they're in that go, go, go mode, steamroll mode, right? Like you said, steamroll mode. So you embody that. And I think I asked you those questions because now it makes sense why the niche works, and why those niches are actually, really effective, because it allows people that are experiencing that particular thing in their life to find someone that's specifically addressing it. And like I said, even as coaches, even if we're not giving you the answer, you almost feel like that initial connection because you've shared a similar experience is like that's what draws you to them. It's like, oh, this person, like, they've experienced it. They're going to hold space for me. And again, just I think empathy plays such a big role in our work too. And just being able to empathize and like, yeah, I think it all just contributes to what you're doing. So again, I appreciate you sharing that because, now we're touching on the coaching piece and yeah, just another way just to inform people about what you offer and just the magic and the power of coaching. So I have a question for you.
Shoot.
We talked a little bit about meditation earlier. Are there any other practices that you would recommend as a way to initiate that type of inner work that we were talking about? Just things that that people could do that maybe they haven't considered before, and just throwing it out there saying, hey, here's an option. Here's a thing.
Journaling.
Mm,
I cannot stress that enough. The power of journaling. What I take away from it is that is my time to create my own world. Just sit with it, tap in. So we talked about unhealthy escapism, right? Through alcoholism, other, negative nuances, right?
hmm
With journaling, I'm able to create the reality I want and remind myself that I have that power to do that, right? And even as you asked that question, it's like I felt that bolt of lightning just like hit me. Mind you, I'm not, but
yeah,
but
yeah. But no, but I think that speaks to how much like you're expressing just that your life is different because of that practice.
oh my
That
gosh, yes,
the way you're starting to like kind of dive into this is like this is a tool, this is a practice. If you spend time doing it, your life will change. Which is also again dependent on what you're writing, how you're writing, where your mind goes. But I think it's just again creating that time and space for it.
I think with journaling, Leroy, is that for one, it teaches you how to properly, thoroughly, and specifically manifest the life you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a moment to give yourself that honesty through creation. Let me tap into that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity through self-honesty, right? So, like, for example, I could say that I am the best life coach ever. And then you start seeing opportunities come and hit you. Oh, do
Mm-hmm.
you want to be on a podcast or do you want to do this? You might meet people to where they are like-minded to a degree. And there's like, you should do this or you should be a coach. And the beauty of journaling, it allows you to get down to the nitty gritty of the life that you want to manifest
Mm-hmm.
and tap into that power. And once you tap into that power by writing it down, you go to sleep on it, right? Or you
Mm-hmm.
meditate. And then as you sleep on it, what's to say for that? As you sleep on it, your dreams are created through what you write.
Mm-hmm.
From the dreams, that curiosity, the magic of curiosity kicks in. And when that curiosity kicks in, then it's like, all right, what do I need to do to take this first step? And as I'm saying this, this is like all as you're inching closer to the edge of that cliff. To then where you like, I'ma just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in myself, I believe in the process, I believe in the system, and you just go with it.
Yeah.
Once you take that first, yeah, there's gonna be some bumps, there's gonna be some bruises, some wounds you may have to throw some dirt on. But as you go through that, it's like the one feeling that is gonna be consistent and constant is the feeling that you took that leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
It like the power of journaling, it goes so long, it goes so far for you because it's like it builds up this momentum of curiosity to where it's like, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from I'm going to do this to now I am doing this.
Yeah.
It's a journey of its own. It's powerful.
Journaling is something that has definitely been another helpful tool in my life. And you're giving me just another way to think about it. Like again, just that nuance, like what journaling has offered you, and talking about creating a life for yourself. If someone has never journaled before and they're like, ugh, like, their reaction to this is like, I don't like to write and I've never done that before. And, you know, where do I even start? What do you say to those people?
I will actually answer that with a question. How do you want to feel?
Hmm.
And I keep it simple at that as that. I think learning how to journal and learning how to manifest in general, like it just starts with a little bit of faith
Mm-hmm.
within self, and it starts with just one basic thing. I think a lot of times when we get to this whole piece of journaling or manifesting or whatever it is, like we got to be honest with ourselves as people, we can take it a little bit too far to where we get so far caught up into the details, we just don't even take that step. We make it bigger than what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I remember when I started journaling, I wrote down, today I choose happiness. Just one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the first few days, I choose happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that that day of just journaling that, it changed I remember for like a whole week I did it and it changed my entire week. I was like, I don't feel anything bad. Yeah, this happened or that happened, but I came home, I'm feeling good. I played Call of Duty with my kids. I beat them in in a plunder match. I had time to crack jokes with my wife. We watch Too Hot to Handle and Love is Blind on Netflix. I didn't cry this time, she did. I slept a good 8 hours. Life is good. And you do it for
That's
a
awesome.
week.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
love it.
do it
I love
for
it.
you do it for a week straight, and then you watch the build up.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you take it one step further. All right, cool. I chose happiness.
Mm-hmm.
What else do I want to do?
Yeah.
Oh, um,
Can I jump in for a sec? I
please,
just because
please, please.
one, I love again, like your mind goes somewhere completely different. And that's why I love hearing what you had to say, because you started with kind of like this statement, although like there was a question that you posed, which was, how do you want to feel? And I would say that that's another option for someone if they want to start, which is where my mind goes first, is questions, right? Like questions can be the most powerful tool. And when you combine the questions with the writing, it's like, see where that takes you. Like, and it's almost like what I'm trying to do here is just paint a picture for people out there that are having that initial reaction to what we're talking about and that resistance to even the idea of it, and just saying, look, you can make it, you can dumb it down as much as you need to. And I'm not saying that as like you're dumb. I'm saying because you've never done this before and you may be resisting what we're talking about as a tool, something that can change your life, dumb it down to the point where you just ask a question. The question could even be, what questions do I have about myself? What questions do I have about life? What questions do I have about work? What questions do I have about why I feel burnt out? And you can ask, and like, you get creative as you want, and like you can ask just the simplest question. And the point is that it leads to something else. As soon as you start writing, the same way this conversation, like, I could structure this and I could say, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z, and we could do that and end the recording. But what happens here is we're almost talking in a way that we would journal sometimes, where when I ask you a question and you respond, we just go off. And it turns into this, like you said, we're learning from one another. And then the journal, you write a question, you're learning about yourself. And I love that you chose the statement, because I feel like that's another way that if we just write how we want to experience life and what we want to focus on, like, I want to stop focusing on the negative things in life. I want to focus on the positive things. I want to focus on happiness. That doesn't mean that you go out into the world and nothing negative happens. It means the way that you respond to it is with a lens of, let me find the positive in all this negative. It doesn't erase the negative. It doesn't create this like delusional sense of like, oh, we just live in a positive world all of a sudden. It's, I choose happiness. So I'm choosing to respond in a way that makes me happy and finding the good in the bad. And I love just that statement that you talked about writing, because you said that you use the journal for that. That would be a little different than I use it. Although I've written things like that on my whiteboard. So it's not a journal, but it's actually, the statements are more the things that I see all the time. It's the visual reminder. So again, another tool, like having something like a whiteboard or something on your refrigerator where you can just write something and see it all the time. But, you know, going along with like that statement, I choose happiness. It's a game changer. It's a game changer, hands down.
It is. And it's like popping in a video game and right out the game is too hard. You choose your difficulty level. And bringing that back full circle to this piece, this doesn't have to be as hard as you visualize it to be. You can make it. The beauty behind the creation is that you could choose how small you want it to be, and you could choose it how large. You could choose as large as you choose it to be, right? You could choose how large you want it to be.
Yeah.
So it's like if you start small, and then it's like, all right, well, what do I want to build onto this? All right, I
Mm-hmm.
went from I choose happiness to, you could do a multitude of things. Some people add on another statement into their manifestation journal, or to your point, right? I've even got as creative as getting a sticky
Mm-hmm.
and putting it in my what was the thing called? The sun blocker. We're just going to say that, the
In the
sun
car.
blocker, right? Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
you. Yeah, I have my moment, my little minute of conceitedness at the stoplight. Just pull down the little sun blocker, and it's like, you are appreciated.
That's awesome. I thought you were going
And
to
it's like,
say that you forgot it was there. So every once in a while, when you go to pull it down, you're like, oh, and you see it. That's what I thought you were going to say.
that's actually happened too.
Yeah,
That's
I like
actually
that.
happened too. Because there's times where I try to find my BJ's membership card, and that, just when I think it'll be the card, it'll be the little stick. I'm like, oh, I am
That's so
amazing.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great place for it. Like, whether you forget or whether, like, even if you know it's there and you pull it down and you remind yourself, it's like, that's great. But if you forget it's there, it's almost like a hidden gem.
It's, you think about it, it's like you creating your own fortune cookie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about it, right? It's like you get
Oh,
that,
man.
you open the cookie, and it's like you because we don't think about, at least for me, I don't think about the fact that I have like the little message. I just want the cookie because it tastes good.
Yeah.
So I open up the little sun blocker, boom, the adhesive is already kind of worn off, but it reminds myself, you are amazing.
Yeah.
You're going to change the world.
Hmm.
And it's like I look at myself in the mirror, and I look right dead in my eyes, and it's like I believe that. And the beauty behind journaling which is leading into this manifestation, the power of it, it gets to a place to where you start believing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you believe it, your your world gets created behind the
The,
scenes.
the belief. It's that belief. I spoke a lot about that on the last podcast that I did. It's that belief. That belief is the driver. It's the driver. Like, and I think there's just one more thing. We'll touch on this, and we'll get ready to wrap this up. We're coming up on the hour, but I almost feel like you pull that down and you see that sticky note, and if you forgot about it, because we can forget about things so quickly, even the things that are most important to us, we can forget about them. And I think as soon as you see it, there's almost like this association with there was a reason why I wrote that in the first place. And I think when you're in the place where you wrote it, like that time and place where you wrote the note itself, is when it was most important to you. Like you felt like, I need to write this out. Like this is the thing that I need in my life. This is the thing that I want to remind myself of. And this is the thing that's going to remind me that in order to change my life around, like this is the way I want to feel, the way I want to think,
Mm-hmm.
the actions that I want to go out in the world and apply. And I feel like just all that hits you, even if most of it's on a subconscious level, but the note implies all that. Like it's all embedded in those couple of words in that statement. And I think whether we're fully aware of it in the moment or not, that's what it is. It's that sticky note. You see it, it's a visual reminder, and it just takes you back to like, there is a very, very good reason that I wrote this in the first place. And I think it's just that, like, that is a practice in and of itself, is to create things like that for ourselves in our life, and then to use them to see it and to have those like immediate shifts in the moment where maybe you're back on steamroll mode and you forget it's there and you pull that visor down and you see that sticky note and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I'm in steamroll mode. And then instead of actually reaching burnout, boom, you just stopped yourself. And for me, like I can't stress or emphasize enough that that is more significant than we realize. You know, like we can sit here and say it's just a sticky note. It's so much more than that. It's so much more.
Sometimes our past serves as a tool. I'm gonna say that again. Sometimes our past serves as a tool. And even as you were mentioning that, right? Like, hey, recognizing that steamroll mode came in about, right? When we get those stickies, it causes us to tap into our past to remind us that we didn't make it this far to make it this far. And you start thinking about the happy details instead of the negative details as far as the work that you've put in to get to this point, and building that excitement to take the next great step to being great.
Mm-hmm.
It, when you journal or you write down things or make affirmations or reminders, it's powerful. It puts us in a place to where we recognize within ourselves, we might not know in the moment, but as time goes along, we're able to transform our world. The more inner work we do, the more our world changes. And I said this in the my very first podcast on Course Creators Academy. It's like the rent that you pay in this world is through service of others.
Mm.
Part of the others is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be of service to yourself before you can serve others. Now, that statement came from Muhammad Ali, but when you think about it, you're part of the others piece, your
Mm-hmm.
own soul, who you are at the core. And a lot of times we think, at least for me, when we think about that statement, we think about everybody else, but how do we play a part to being of service?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it comes into play. That's by doing that inner work. It plays a big role.
Yeah. Yeah. I love where you took that, and just that, you know, just getting to a place where like I think it's important to recognize that regardless of whether you feel like you can be of service to others or not, I think at the core of it is just recognizing that we live in a world where all of us are impacting one another. And so when you realize that there are ripples that are going out into the world, I think when you start digging deep and you start recognizing that wow, we're all connected, then the question becomes, now that I'm fully aware of how connected we really are, how do I want to impact others? Because I am impacting them. But now that I'm aware of, how connected we are, it's, do I want to have a positive impact or do I have a negative impact? And
Mm.
even that is really tough, and it takes a lot of time to figure out like what, you have to start like, well, what does positive impact even mean? Right. And I think that's where, again, start doing your own work. And then you start to realize too, like, the more work you do with yourself, like you said it so beautifully, then you can be of service to others and feel like you almost take like charge, like you step into a new version of that role, and like you feel equipped to actually be of service to others. Where prior to that, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's almost overwhelming to even think about anyone else. And yet you're still impacting them. Like that's the thing, is like we're always impacting one another. But if you're not equipped to do it and it's overwhelming to you, then it's a totally different impact than I'm doing things to take care of myself. And I actually feel like I have energy and I have um, maybe a message that I want to send out into the world where it's like, hey, I've experienced X, Y, and Z. I don't want you to make the same mistake. That's a positive impact. So I'm going to teach you how not to do that, you know? So yeah, just
Absolutely.
love where you took that. Um, one more thing. I just want to say, I think with the going back to the sticky note, I love the idea that just when we talk about support, like the support in our lives, there are people that care for us and there are people that are going to cheer you on. And but I also think the sticky note is a way that we can practice cheering ourselves on, because I think one of the hardest things to do is to do just that. I think we get into the habit of looking around and saying, who's cheering me on? Like, I don't feel like I can do anything if I'm not hearing applause from the crowd. And it's like, you've got to wake up and applaud yourself. You've got to wake up and cheer for yourself. And I feel like a sticky note is another reminder of that. It's, oh, yeah, even when I don't hear anything, I know that I'm rooting for myself. So that gives me that little extra push. And then when you do have everyone applauding for you, you're not dependent on it, but you appreciate it and you're grateful for it at the same time.
Absolutely. This is like when you think about this is just like a math problem, right? We always get math homework, and what does the teacher always tell us to do? Show your work, right?
Oh, yeah.
Your inner work is always your homework. Your outer work is where you always show your work.
Oh, oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm
Yeah.
gonna say this again. Your inner work is always your homework.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing with that, right? The affirmations, being creative around how you create these affirmations, right?
Yeah.
You're creating a space for, you're learning how to create a space for yourself. You're learning how to be your own cheerleader,
Yeah.
right? And that transmutes and translates to where when you start letting the outer work either come in or you present yourself to where you're able to do that outer work,
Yeah.
that's where you show the work of what you've been doing on internally.
Right. That is
You
really cool.
know, life is
Where
like a
would you
huge life is a huge math problem.
Oh man, once you said it's like a math problem, I was like, where are we going with this one? And I was excited. No, that's really cool. And when you say showing your work, like that's the thing is, that just goes back to that impact piece. We're all impacting one another. And I think when we look to others and we see the work that they've done, and especially when people document that and they're sharing how they've done what they've done, what works, what doesn't, um, they're showing their work, right? Like they've done work, now they're showing it, they're offering it to the world and being of service. And yeah, that's a really cool way of putting it too. Man, this was a really good conversation, and I'm not gonna lie, I had so much here that I was like, maybe we'll cover this and we'll cover this, we'll cover this, and we barely touched any of it. We barely scratched the surface. Um, but that's cool because maybe in the future we'll have the opportunity to touch on some other things if you're open to it. But as far as today
I'm down.
goes, yeah, I mean this was a great conversation. This, yeah, this has me feeling really good. It's one of those conversations where this sets the tone for the rest of my day, and it's a good one for sure. So I appreciate you coming on here. Thanks for sharing about yourself. Before we wrap up, if you want to share where people can find you or things to look out for, feel free to talk on that.
Yes, to the world. You can find me on Instagram at Soul Tribe Transformations, one huge word. Twitter, Soul Tribe Trans One. Um, yeah, and things that's coming soon. Abundantly Clear podcast. That'll be coming extremely soon. Don't blink, you might miss it. So, with all that said, again, Leroy, thank you for having me. This has been amazing. This is fun. This is amazing. This is amazing. But yeah, just be sure to find me on there, guys, and I look forward to meeting with you. If you guys ever want to schedule a one-on-one session, just tap into the link in bio on Instagram. Look forward to meeting up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, your personal burnout and purpose coach, James Tates. And I just want to add, on his Instagram, you had the podcast that you did recently on, what was the place called, or
Yeah.
the
hmm So yeah, you could. That was actually the first podcast I've ever done. So if you want to check that out, it's on Course Creators Academy podcast from with Pua from Rebel Media. Check out her website, rebelmedia.co. And check out the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google platforms. It'll be episode 49, How Coaching Saved My Life.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of the place that hosted the podcast, but definitely listen to that. You share a lot more of your story. And so, yeah, just if people are curious and want to find out more about you, that's a great podcast to listen to. So, thanks again for coming on. That about wraps it up. But like I said, hopefully we can pick up where we left off in the future. And to the audience, be well.